the unit or collective body, consciousness is first metamorphosed into Mahatattva and thereafter is subject to a series of gradual transformations. If we call this process Anuloma Vyavashta, descending order of metamorphosis, the process of sadhana should be described as Pratilom Vyavashta, ascending order of evolution. Through the process of sadhana, a sadhaka proceeds from crude to subtle, from psychic to spiritual, from the mental sphere to the meta-empirical sphere of consciousness. Here a question arises. When unit beings reach increasingly subtle realms, will the quinculemental world become non-existent? I would say in reply that the quinculemental world is not the creation of the unit mind, but is the creation of macropsychic connection, and thus much more powerful than the unit mind. So as long as the unit mind exists, the quinculemental world will certainly exist. It will still exist when the unit mind becomes pinnacle, or apexed, and merges in the cosmic mind, not as a relative truth, but as various imaginative flows. But when the unit mind reaches the ultimate stage and dissolves in cosmic consciousness, it ceases to exist, for the macrocosmic mind itself loses its identity. So the unit mind should be withdrawn from the world of fundamental factors and focused on the non-attributional entity. When the mind is completely withdrawn from the relative world, a sadhaka is said to have attained the original stance. The emergence of the five fundamental factors occurred due to the movement of the macrocosmic mind from subtle to crude. In the process of crudification, the cosmic mind stuff, Shita, was metamorphosed into the ethereal factor, which comes within the scope of microcosmic perception. The ethereal factor further condensed and crudified and was metamorphosed into the aerial factor, coming within the more direct perception of the unit mind. The aerial factor, becoming even more condensed and crudified, was transformed into the luminous factor, the medium of perception of the visual organ. The luminous factor, in the process of further crudification, was converted into the liquid factor, becoming a drinkable substance for living beings, and the liquid factor, in the process of even further crudification, was metamorphosed into the solid factor. In this descending order of movement, the crude manifestations of the cosmic mind can be perceived by a greater number of sense organs, indriyas, than the subtle ones. So in the process of withdrawal, pratyahara, one should first withdraw one's mind from those crude physical objects, which are perceptible to a greater number of sense organs, and then direct it towards subtle objects, thus completing the process of Bhuta Shuddhi, an important part of spiritual cult. The initial struggle that a sadhaka has to wage, standing firmly on the ground of yama and niyama, is the struggle against the static pressure of the five fundamental factors. It is the struggle to perfect pratyahara sadhana. Yateva bimban mridayo paliptam teyo mayam pradyate tat sudantam tadvat mattatvam priya shmikshya dehi ekaha kriharto bhavate vita shokaha. Do you know what unit beings are? They are like impure gold, but this impure gold and its impurities are not unnatural in the hands of an experienced goldsmith, and it will become pure and glittering after the impurities are removed through the application of heat and other processes. The impurities are bound to be removed. In a similar manner, human beings will have to remove their mental impurities with the help of the heat of sadhana, after first washing the human mind with the holy water of yama and niyama, the first two limbs of the eight-limbed Ashtanga Yoga. An intellect person never misutilizes or underutilizes any object. The impurities are not an integral part of your original stance, but are distortions created by Prakriti. To realize that original stance, they must be removed. However, they are embedded in the mind. They are inseparably associated with it. They are the propensities causing pleasure, positive mental propensity, and pain, negative mental propensity. If these propensities lie dormant or are unexpressed, the mind is unable to maintain its existence, centering around its Mahatattva or existential life feeling, and when they are overactive, they lead microcosms far away from the original stance. Those people can be called Kritatma, successful in their mission, who have freed themselves from these distortions, like pain and pleasure, and have thus become as pure as gold. Yadatma tattvena tu brahma tattvam dipo pameniha yuktaha parpashyet ajam dhruvam sarva tattva irvishuddham gyanatva deva mushyate sarva pashaye. It is only possible to understand the nature of Brahma with the help of one's individual self, Atman. You cannot understand the Supreme Entity with the help of your psychic factor, because he is beyond the scope of the mind, and with the sensory organs, which are even cruder than the mind, it is even more impossible to understand him. He is beyond the grasp of everything. The gross Indriyas are the cruder manifestations of the distorted mind. This distorted mind, even though it is inherently subtle, often fails to understand or realize that entity, because the unit Chitta created, as it is by the static principle, is only able to perceive finite entities. But by ideating on unlimited Brahma, one can become established in the cosmotheistic being, causing the static bondages of Chitta to snap and the Chitta to lose its existence. The moment this happens, the existence of the unit Aham Tattva and Mahatattva, the controlling faculties of Chitta, also become unsubstantiated, resulting in the entire microcosmic being becoming free from the bondages of limitations. With the dissolution of the unit mind, there remains only the pure self. To attain or not to attain this pure self at this stage is equal for a sadhaka, because after the dissolution of the unit mind, the consciousness reflected on the unit mental plate does not get any base in the temporal factor and returns to the original macrocosmic bearing, becoming one with Purushottama. That is to say, whenever sadhakas realize the unit soul, they discover that this unit soul and Brahma are the same. Once the impurities are removed from the mind, the separate existence of these two entities is lost.